Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Thank you very much for joining today, dear devotees. Today we're going to actually look at the last of the Sapta Rishis in this manvantara. So we've looked at Vishwamitra Muni, we did Atri Muni, Bharadvaj, who else was there? We looked at Kashyap Muni, Gautam Muni, Jamdagni Muni. So all of those we've had a brief look at their life. Now today we were going to look at the final one of the 7 rishis in this manvantara. But we're going to continue with other rishis going forward who appeared in different manvantaras. So I think we've got another 8 or 9 different rishis to have a look at their lives briefly. So today we will look at Vishwamitra Muni, who's a very interesting character. So there we go, Vishwamitra. So we seek his blessing so that we can try to understand this amazing personality. Brahm Rishi Vishwamitra is one of the most revered rishis or sages of ancient Bharat. He's written most of the Mandala 3 of the Rig Vedas, including the Gayatri Mantra. So he is the one who's given us the Om Bhu Bhuvaswa Gayatri Mantra, which many Vedic scholars, Vedic followers recite. So and before reciting it, actually, it's recommended that we should remember him. So Vishwamitra is the source of the Gayatri Mantra. The Puranas mention that only 24 rishis have understood the whole meaning of and thus wielded the whole power of Gayatri Mantras. 24 rishis, and there are millions and billions of rishis. So you can just imagine the strength and power of this Gayatri Mantra. Hardly anybody understands it, including us, unfortunately. Vishwamitra is supposed to be the first and Yajnavalkya the last. Not sure what that means. Maharishi Vishwamitra wasn't a Brahmin by birth. This is one of the things about Vishwamitra which makes him unique from all of the other Sapta Rishis. He wasn't a Brahmin from birth. He was a Kshatriya. He was a warrior. He was a king. In the Chandra Vams dynasty, sage Vishwamitra is one of the key characters of Ramayana, the great epic of Sanatana Dharma. He was known as Kaushik. So Kaushik, King Kaushik. He was the ruler as Kshatriya. Before renouncing his kingdom and royal status, Brahm Rishi Vishwamitra was a king. Thus, he retained the title of Raj Rishi. Raj means king, and Rishi means royal king, royal sage. I mean, sage, yeah, sorry. Rishi means sage. Most of the pastimes relating to Vishwamitra's life is narrated in Valmiki's Ramayana. And Vishwamitra was a king in ancient India, also called Kaushik, descendant of Kusha, and belonged to the Amavasu dynasty. Vishwamitra was originally the king of Kanya Kubja, modern day Kannauj. He was a valiant warrior and the great grandson of a great king named Kusha. Valmiki Ramayana prose 51 of the Balkans starts with the story of Vishwamitra. There was a king named Kusha, not to be confused with Kusha, the son of Ram. He was a mind son, Manasputra of Brahma, and Kusha's son was the powerful and really very righteous Kushanaba, one who is highly renowned by the name of Gadi, was the son of Kushanaba. And Gadi's son is this great saint of great resplendence, Vishwamitra. Vishwamitra ruled the earth and for many thousands of years. Satyavati was married to an old man known as Ruchika. Hang on a minute. Where does this fit in? Oh, that's right. I think that's right. Who was the foremost amongst the race of Brigu. Ruchika desired a son having the qualities of a Brahmin. So he gave Satyavati a sacrificial offering, charu, which he had prepared to achieve this objective. Now, this Ruchika was a great sage, and he married Satyavati. And Satyavati's mother mother and father didn't have a son to continue with the dynasty. So the mother also asked Ruchika, give me something so I can have a child. So he made another charu for her. And that personality would have the characteristics of a Kshatriya, a warrior, as opposed to Satyavati, whose son would be a Brahmin. Now, Satyavati's mother, she was thinking, yes, Satyavati will have a better, because he's the husband. Ruchika will give Satyavati a better progeny. So let me swap, let me ask my daughter to exchange her charu for mine. And the daughter was very obedient. She swapped it around. So the mother gave birth to Vishwamitra. Now Vishwamitra, and the daughter gave birth to Jamdagni, the father of Pashuram, who Pashuram has got the qualities of the warrior. So Vishwamitra, because he was born to the mother of Satyavati, he was a Kshatriya by nature. But because Ruchika had given, or Satyavati had given her charu to the mother, actually he was a sage, but he had the qualities and nature of a Kshatriya. Now, the biggest part of this pastime of Vishwamitra is his dispute with Vashishta. So we talked about that when we talked about Vashishta. So we'll just quickly go through that. Maharishi Vashishta possessed a divine cow, Kamadhenu, that was able to give everything that one wished for. Once King Kaushik, the Vishwamitra, saw the cow. In fact, they went to the ashram of Vishwamitra, and Vishwamitra fed the whole of the army of, Vashishta fed the whole army of Vishwamitra. And Vishwamitra was amazed. How the heck did you manage to do that? You're a poor Brahmin. But he saw that the cow, Kamadhenu cow, was giving everything. Lots of gulab jamuns and puris and rice and sabji and whatever else was required, dakshina and so on. So he said to Vashishta, I want your cow. I'm the king. I own everything in this land, including your cow. But Vashishta actually refused to do that, because she actually didn't belong to him, belonged to the devas, the great sages, the demigods. King Kaushika became angry due to his arrogance, and he attacked Vashishta with all his forces. However, he was defeated by the power of Vashishta's penance, and Surabhi, or Kamadhenu, created soldiers, and she was also rescued somehow by Lord Shiva. Vashishta destroyed Vishwamitra's entire army by the simple use of his great mystic and powerful spiritual powers. Simply breathing Om, and he would hold his sannyas danda, and it would negate all of Kaushika's army or weapons. So then Vishwamitra was amazed. How did this Brahman defeat me and my army? He asked Lord Shiva, how is it possible? And Shiva told him that this happens due to Vashishta's position as Brahm Rishi, due to his tapasya. Now Kaushik had quite an ego. He wanted to also gain this Brahm Rishi status like Vashishta. So he started doing penance, tapasya, guided by Vamdeva. And eventually, after executing tapasya for a very long time, several years, many years, he managed to please Lord Shiva, who bestowed the weapon, the knowledge of celestial weaponry. Then he again went to Vashishta's ashram to use those weapons to destroy Vashishta. And the only thing he managed to do was he actually succeeded in killing Vashishta's 1,000 children. How ridiculous is that? But he didn't kill Vashishta. And enraged Vashishta brings out the Brahma Danda, the wooden stick imbued with the power of Brahma. It consumes Vishwamitra's most powerful weapons, the Brahmastra. Vashishta then attempts to attack Vishwamitra, but his anger is allayed by Devas. So Vashishta was a sage, so his anger could easily be controlled. Vishwamitra, again, he was left humiliated in this defeat. So again, Vishwamitra went to do more tapasya. He realized he hasn't reached the position of Brahma Rishi. So at that time, Indra actually sent Menaka to seduce Vishwamitra, and it worked. She was one of the most beautiful apsaras, and she broke his meditation. And the reason Indra sent Menaka was because he was scared that Vishwamitra would become very powerful and he would create another heaven in competition to Indra. Anyway, Menaka successfully incited Vishwamitra's lust and passion, and she succeeded in breaking his meditation. And eventually, anyway, she fell in love with him. A baby girl was born, who later grew in sage Kanva's ashram, came to be known as Shakuntala. And later on, this Shakuntala was a very famous character. She fell in love with King Dushyanta and gave birth to a child called Bharat. And he's got a very interesting future, Bharat. However, later Vishwamitra cursed Menaka to be separated from him forever. He loved her as well, but she had broken his vow, and his vow was very important to him. So anyway, Vishwamitra then travels to Godavari. He continues his penances at a place where Lord Shiva stood as Kalanjara. Again, Vishwamitra was tested by the Apsara Rambha, but he did not get tempted this time. He cursed her. After cursing her, he goes to the highest mountain of the Himalayas to perform even more severe tapasya for 1,000 years. He ceases to eat. He reduces his breathing to a bare minimum. He was tested again by Indra when he comes as a poor Brahmin begging for food. Just as Kaushika is ready to break a fast of many years by eating some rice, Kaushika immediately gives that food to Indra and resumes his meditation. Kaushika finally masters his passions, refusing to be provoked by any of Indra's testing and seductive interferences. At the penultimate culmination of a multi-thousand-year journey, Kaushika's yogic power is at a peak. At that point, Brahma, as the head of the Devas, led by Indra, names Kaushika a Brahm Rishi, and he gives him the name Vishwamitra, friend of all, for his unlimited compassion. So that's what Vishwamitra means. Mitra means friend, Vishwa is everybody's friend. Then he goes to Vashishta again. It was customary that if a sage was greeted by an equal or superior person, the sage would also greet the person in the same way. If a sage was greeted by an inferior person, the sage would bless him. Initially, when Vishwamitra greeted Vashishta with the pride of being a new Brahmrishi in heart, Vashishta simply blessed him because he was inferior. Suddenly, all pride and desire left Vashishta's heart, and he became a clean and clear Brahmrishi. When Vishwamitra turned back to leave, Vashishta realized a change of heart had come over Vishwamitra, and he proceeded to greet him. Vishwamitra is also embraced by Vashishta, and their enmity is instantly ended. So there is another pastime, which I think we talked about as well, that one time Vishwamitra went to Vashishta, and he was going to challenge him to a fight. But Vashishta was actually, he heard Vashishta glorifying him, that Vishwamitra is the kindest person. And when he heard that, he was amazed, and he gave up all of his anger. Vishwamitra gave up all his anger. And at that time, it's regarded that he attained this Brahm Rishi status properly. Another pastime Vishwamitra is known for is his creation of his own version of Swarga, or heaven. And this is called Trishanku Swarga. There was a proud king called Trishanku who asked his guru, Vashishta, to send him to heaven in his own body. Vashishta responded that this body cannot ascend to heaven. What's the matter with you? King Trishanku then asked Vashishta's 100 sons, or maybe it was 1,000 sons, to send him to heaven. The sons, believing that Trishanku should not have come to them after their father had refused, took outrage and cursed Trishanku to become a Chandala, a low life person. Trishanku was transformed into a person with body smeared of ash, clothed in black and wearing iron jewelry. Unrecognizable to his subjects, he was driven out of the kingdom. In his exile, Trishanku came across the sage Vishwamitra, who agreed to help him. Vishwamitra organized a great sacrifice and ritual, propitiating the devas, pleading that they accept Trishanku into heaven. Not one deva responded. Angered, Vishwamitra used his yogic powers and ordered Trishanku to rise to heaven. Miraculously, Trishanku rose into the sky until he reached heaven, when he was pushed back by Indra. Enraged even more by this, Vishwamitra commenced the creation of another Swarga, another universe, including another Brahma for Trishanku. So you can see Vishwamitra was very powerful. He had only completed the universe when Brihaspati asked him to stop, ordered him to stop. Trishanku, however, did not fully transcend through Trishanku Swarga created for him. He remained fixed and upside down in the sky and was transformed into a constellation, which is now known as the Crux. Very interesting. In the process of forming a new universe, Vishwamitra used all of the tapa he had gained from his austerities. Therefore, after the Trishanku episode, Vishwamitra had to start his prayers again to attain the status of Brahm Rishi and become equal of Vashishta. So that's an interesting pastime. And then we have this pastime with Harishchandra and Ambarish sacrifice. While undertaking a penance, Kaushik helped a boy named Shunashepa, who had been sold by his parents to be sacrificed at the yajna of Harishchandra and Ambarish to please Varun Dev. This is quite heavy stuff. The king's son, Rohit, he was the one to be sacrificed, but he didn't want to be sacrificed. So, because originally he was the one who was promised to be sacrificed. So then they took this Shunashepa to sacrifice him. They bought him. A devastated and terrified Shunashepa fell at the feet of Kaushik, who was deep in meditation and begged for his help. Kaushik teaches secret mantras to Shunashepa, and the boy sings these mantras at the ceremonies, blessed by Indra and Varun, and Ambarish's ceremony is complete. So in this way, Vishwamitra saves this boy. So Vishwamitra was also a teacher of Lord Ramachandra. Vishwamitra gave them the knowledge, that's Ram and Lakshman, the knowledge of the Devastras, or celestial weapons. He trains them in advanced religion. This is amazing because they're already God. They don't need to be trained. But they accept a teacher, which is an example to us that we also have to accept a teacher to help us, even if we think we are spiritually advanced, because we're not. And he guides them also to kill powerful demons like Tadaka, Maricha, and Shubhahu. He also leads them to the Swamvar ceremony for Princess Sita, who becomes the wife of Ram. And his different works, Vishwamitra is said to have found Gayatri Mantra. It is a verse from the Shukta Rigved, Mandal 362.10. Gayatri is the name of the Vedic meter in which the verse is composed. His descendants, he had many children from different women. Madhu Chanda was also a composer of many hymns in the Rigved. According to the Mahabharata, Shushruta, the father of plastic surgery, was one of his sons. Ashtak was born from Madhavi, was successor to his kingdom. Shakuntala, we talked about the daughter, was born from Menaka. She was the mother of Bharat, who became a powerful emperor as well as ancestor of the Kuru kings. From Hema ultimately came Shantanu, and then Bhishma, like that. Brahmins belonging to Kaushik or Vishwamitra Gotra claim that they have descended from the sage Vishwamitra. The distinction can be found from the respective pravaras. So, I'm not quite sure what this means. Kaushik is one of the main Gotras of the Brahmins. That's right, because it's regarded that Kashyap Muni also gave birth to, or was the cause of birth of the animals and the demons. So Kashyap Muni's Gotra is not necessarily one of the ones which the Brahmins come into. Kaushik, but sorry, Kashyap's isn't. Kaushik's is. So that's the end of Vishwamitra. Vishwamitra ki jai. Any comments, any questions? Very interesting personality. There's a lot about him actually that we haven't covered. This is pastimes with Harishchandra, where he tests the truthfulness of this king to such an extent which is actually heartbreaking. But this king Harishchandra actually meets all the tests which Vishwamitra sets him, and Vishwamitra becomes very, very pleased with Harishchandra at the end. Anybody else? Anything else you'd like to share? Okay, we can stop there. Vishwamitra ki jai, Sapta Rishis ki jai.